Okay, so we mentioned nucleotides there when we were looking at the actual structure of the DNA molecule, okay? So when we look at the individual nucleotides, so this is one nucleotide, you'll recognise this because your teacher would have put it up on the board, okay? So this is our phosphate group, this is our deoxyribose sugar, hence where the molecule gets a part of its name from, okay? And this is this individual base. So all of this is one nucleotide, okay? And then we'll go on and talk about the kind of the antiparallel structure of the two running strands and the importance of talking about the individual carbons within the nucleotides is also very important. So when you look at this sugar here, okay, so deoxyribose sugar, it's composed of an oxygen atom and then it has 5 carbons. Sorry, I know as I'm leaning on the desk I'm making the phone shake. And this is really to help you understand when we come on to this diagram and the how the strands run in opposite directions, okay? Because here is our final carbon, 5th carbon here. So we call this our 5 end that's attached to the phosphate group, okay? And this corner here of this sugar is our 3 carbon, because essentially what we're just about to show you is that when the strands run, so when we're talking about this sugar phosphate backbone, we're talking about these individual strands, and it's composed of lots and lots and lots of these running down the one strand, okay? But we're going to have kind of 2 ends to the strand, okay? So one strand will have these phosphate groups at the end of it, so our 5 end, whereas at the end of that strand there won't be another nucleotide being attached onto this one. So what will happen is you'll have your 3rd carbon, so your 3 end, and then the other strand will be in the opposite way, okay? So the basic structure of a nucleotide is what we're looking at, okay, is a phosphate group, a deoxyribose sugar, and then a base, and that base can be either adenine or thymine or guanine or cytosine, okay? So this is one nucleotide, all right. So it says here nucleotides are linked by the deoxyribose sugars and phosphates to form a strand with a sugar phosphate backbone, okay? So if we look at, for instance, this diagram here, okay, so if you imagine that this is a close-up of that previous diagram here. So as we can see here, we've got 2 strands, okay, so our double-stranded molecule, okay, and those strands are made up of lots and lots and lots of individual nucleotides, okay. So this wee bit here is just showing you that here is our phosphate group, here is our deoxyribose sugar, and that is making our sugar phosphate backbone, because these bases come out separate from that backbone as such, but it's still joined as the one unit, i.e. the one nucleotide, okay. So here is one strand, and as we can see, the very first at the top of the strand is a phosphate group sticking out. So this is our 5th carbon attached to the phosphate, okay, so it's linking the deoxyribose to the phosphate group. So this is classed as our 5 end. But when we run, so obviously we're simplifying this because there's only 4 nucleotides here, but if we run this with all the thousands of nucleotides in the one strand, eventually there'll be one last nucleotide. And if it started at 5 at the top, then the running formation of this strand is that there will be a 3 end to the bottom of the strand, and that's because there is no other phosphate group attached to this sugar, so we have our 3 carbon at the very end, okay. So this strand is running in this direction, 5 to 3, and the importance is that the opposite strand runs in the opposite direction, so this is classed as antiparallel, it's going in a different direction. So what you'll see is we still have individual nucleotides, okay, but essentially they've been flipped, they're upside down. So as this strand here, there is a phosphate group at the beginning, so we have our 5th carbon, okay, whereas the opposite is our deoxyribose, our 3 carbon, our 3 end is at the beginning of the strand, okay, whereas the very end is the 5th carbon is the phosphate group, which is the opposite to the other strand. So this strand, 5 carbon running to the 3rd carbon, and in this strand we have 3 at the top and 5 at the bottom. Okay, so as we're saying here, strands run in opposite directions. So one strand has a deoxyribose 3 at one end of the molecule, okay, but its complementary strand has a phosphate group or a 5 end at the same end of the molecule. Okay, so 5 to 3, 5 to 3, antiparallel structure.